Originally, I'm from the Midwest. I lived in Indiana. That's where I grew up. In a little town called Westville, Indiana. I think it's got a population of like 2,000 or 1,500. It's really small. I grew up out there in the country. I had a little BB gun. I went around terrorizing most of the wildlife with that. I spent a lot of time climbing trees and hanging out in the forest and running through fields and setting things on fire. I was a troublemaker, but I never got caught. My brother was a troublemaker and he always got caught. So like if I was gonna sneak out at night, I would actually plan for days and take WD-40 and put it on all the hinges and stuff so nobody could hear me coming home. So when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time in church. It was this really hyper-religious, right-wing, evangelical form of Christianity. I mean, there were a lot of good things that came from that. We had a kick-ass orchestra. And my orchestra director, who ended up becoming one of my mentors, was a very strict, tough guy who was our neighbor. But it was kind of that strictness or that toughness, and he ended up taking me under his wing as a cello teacher too. And so kind of once I started getting these private cello lessons in a very sort of strict way where I was like seeing huge gains. I remember I went to one, I think it was maybe like 4th or 5th lesson with him and I hadn't practiced. And so we sit down and I start playing for him and he said, "Hold on a second, did you not practice?" I said, "Well, and he said, get the fuck out of here and don't ever come back without practicing again." And I went home to my parents and I said, "Mr. Schnabel," I was like crying. Like, he said, "Get the fuck out of here." Like, "Well, did you practice?" And I was like, "No." They're like, "Well, that's what happens." That's what happens. So, and that was the last time I ever didn't practice for Tom Schnabel. I was sort of starting to improvise like even at like 12, 13 years old. You spend a lot of time in the countryside, there's not a lot to do, and so oftentimes I get bored or you'd be frustrated with your family or your parents, and so what I would do is go into my room and just saw on my instrument, and so it was a way for me to go through kind of like a catharsis. I didn't really know that that's what I was doing at the time, but it was just a way for me to emotionally express myself. I think because it was the Midwest, and I think because it's sort of a Western society where men aren't really taught to express themselves, I had found a way like through my cello to actually like go through and like dig into like my emotions and use the music as a way to purge a lot of that. Fast forward to now, when I play live, I'm trying to sort of get into that same sort of cathartic state where I know the notes that I'm going to play, or at least a version thereof, and I just kind of try to release. That's the times that people will really see me let go is when I play the cello, and I use that as my instrument to sort of tap into something else. My goal, I guess, as a musician is to be a conduit like for the audience so that I can help transport people other places, because that's what music is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a language that you can use to really get lost in, or to create imagery, to create story. I go home to Indiana once or twice a year, and I play for my sister's 2nd grade or 3rd grade class. And I think it was 3 years ago I was playing, and I finished playing for like a half an hour. I was like just performing for these kids, and one kid raises his hand and he says, "Do you play any songs?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just played for like 30 minutes for you guys. Those are all songs." He's like, "No, they're not. They're more like stories." And I was like, Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and you're in 2nd grade, and you just basically summarized what I am doing. And so I had this whole conceptualization from this little kid that I am actually storytelling. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the music, is really just to tell a story and take people places.